Welcome to the Prosperity Podcast with your host, Brian Davey, focusing on economic empowerment in Northern Ontario. Join us for dynamic guests sharing ideas, stories, and news that fuel Indigenous business growth. Discover success stories and cutting-edge strategies to unlock the potential of Indigenous entrepreneurship. This is the Prosperity Podcast because when we grow together, we all prosper. Let's get started. G'day, so we're talking today with Jamie Taylor from the CEDC, who's the Chief Executive Officer. And maybe you can start by telling us a little bit about CEDC and what they do.
Sure. Thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me here today. So the CEDC, Thunder Bay Community Economic Development Commission, we are the Economic Development Corporation for the City of Thunder Bay. We're an arms-like organization, and we focus on everything from community development, business development, and tourism for the City of Thunder Bay.
Awesome. So recently you did a study where you partnered up with some Aboriginal Indigenous partners. I'll let you explain that part. But the study was called Indigenous Economic Impact Analysis of Thunder Bay. This is a very interesting study to all of us because it does have, we always knew there was an impact of some sort, but we were never really clear on what that impact was. So you came along and tell us why, first of all, you got into this study for the City of Thunder Bay or on behalf of CEDC.
Yeah, no, actually, as part of our strategic plan, we have a pillar that's called Strengthening Community, and we have a number of different initiatives that we are identifying under that pillar. And we had some discussions around the office about what we, like you said, we knew that there was an Indigenous economic impact, and we wanted to really think about whether or not that would be beneficial information for the community to have. We all know that there could be some negative media around Indigenous people in Thunder Bay, and we wanted to find a way to really showcase some of the positivity. We knew that there were several Indigenous businesses. We knew that there were several Indigenous communities that use Thunder Bay as a hub for education, for healthcare, but also for commerce. So we knew that there was spend happening in our community, and we really wanted to think about how we could publicly share that information. So one of the first things that we did was phone our friends, right? Who could we first of all validate that this was a good idea with, and who could become partners as the CEDC executed this study. So we reached out to you, Brian, Anishinaabe Development Fund, as well as the board for the Anishinaabe Business Professionals Association, and of course our partners, Fort William First Nations, to see, first of all, whether or not this was a good idea, and second of all, whether or not they were interested in partnering on this initiative. And luckily, everyone said yes. So we got together. We talked about what it could look like, talked about who had the capacity to do this kind of a study. We did issue an RFP. Happy that we were able to award it to an Indigenous firm. So Indigenous Communities Engagement, Mike Fox's firm, won the bid and was able to develop a report that we have now.
Further on the why, was there an intention at some point that the study itself would drive policy, or be it municipal policy, government policy? Was there some thinking behind the study that if we did get into this, maybe we would have some data that would be useful for policy development within government?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first piece is raising the awareness, so informing people of what the actual impact is, and then we can talk about how that can help inform policy. So Indigenous spending is growing in Thunder Bay. So what do we do about that, right? How can we promote that more? How can we look at internal procurement policies to be able to support further growth? We thought that this would be the catalyst to really start that discussion and help move some of the yardsticks.
Okay, so when did we start gathering the data for the study, and how long did it take to finish the report?
It was about a year process, a little bit less. So the data that was available at the time was the 2020 data. We do know that obviously, because of the pandemic, was probably not a fully accurate year of what is actually happening. but understanding that this report is a baseline and knowing what we know now based on 2020 and what's evolved over the past 4 years, we know that these numbers are probably the lowest that they could have been, and that we expect when we hope to repeat this study in the next 3 to 5 years that we'll see immense growth.
Okay. So what's in the report? Let's get into the report. Tell us what the numbers are, and we'll go from there.
Well, the report, the full amount, so the report looked at all things, so direct, indirect, and induced spending, and the direct economic impact is $1.55 billion to the economy of Thunder Bay, which is an incredible number. I think we all had ideas that the number would be big, but when you see a B behind the number, it really signifies
So that
big.
was that 2020?
Those are 2020 numbers.
That number? Okay. All right.
So if we think about all the progress that has been made from 2020 to now, that number is probably a lot larger.
Yeah. Yeah. So the other question that comes up from people that read the report was, we know that GDP 40% around there in Canada is government spending, related to government spending. Do we know at this point how much of that is related to government spending, or are we just it's not articulated at this point?
There is a little a breakdown by sector within the report. I don't know the number off the top of my head.
Right. Okay, that's fine. So what are some of the other interesting numbers beside the big one that you might want to share with us?
Yeah, so direct spending is $411 million. So that it makes up about 6.5 of the GDP for Thunder Bay. The direct spending creates just over 3,000 full-time jobs in Thunder Bay, and $148 million in labor. So those are all really impactful numbers. The study also provides some examples. So like if you think about how Thunder Bay is used as a hub, there's an Indigenous conference here this week. Number of participants. So let's say that conference in total was $300,000 in spending. When you think about hotel rooms, meals, flights, all of the things. That has an impact of $304,000 to our GDP, $702 in total output, and $170,000 in labor income, and created 2 jobs. Right? Incredible. That's a 3-day conference in Thunder Bay, and that's just one example.
Yeah. I was also reading the report somewhere, or I might have been reading somewhere else, that either in one of your presentations, that 1 million is equivalent to. Maybe you can finish that statement for me.
Yeah, 1 million for every 1 million in Indigenous spending, it results in 2.09 in output, 900,000 in GDP, 550,000 in labor income, 480,000 in wages, and 7 full-time equivalent positions.
Awesome. That's incredible. So most of the contribution is related to, I think it was health services or social services, or is that correct?
Yeah, I believe that you are correct in that.
Yeah, good. So we have the report, where do we go from here? What are some of the things that you'd like to see with this report? First of all, let's start with the first one. What was some of the initial feedback after tabling the report publicly?
So far, the feedback's been really positive. A lot of people are interested in the numbers, and I think it's a lot of validation for what everyone has been thinking. So we want to continue with that positivity around the messaging and sharing the information as wide as we can.
Yeah, and did you present to the city at some city council already?
Yeah, I haven't presented to the city council yet, but we are sharing the report. The city has a growth task force, so that report is going to be shared with that committee as they consider the pathway forward for the city. I think that's a really important place to start, and will be shared with city council and also the different divisions within the city. So it gets people that are working on different programs within the city informed about what the impacts are.
And government itself, was it shared with different agencies?
Yeah, we did share it with, obviously it was a FedNor funded project, so they'll have a copy of that federally, but the minister herself was very interested and did receive a copy.
And the Ontario government, are they involved? Like, for example, the Ministry of Indigenous Affairs, I forget what their name is. Have they shown an interest in hearing?
They haven't been involved, but they're in an election right now. So
Yeah,
we'll
there's not
follow
much
up
you
with
can
them
do,
once
yeah.
that's all done.
Exactly, yeah. All right, so, okay, now that we have the report, where do we go from here? It's like it's great news story from what I read. And is there a policy development being considered, or is there a plan to do another one at some point? You mentioned something about 3-5 years down the road. What's your hope? Is there a marketing initiative to start it off? How maybe you can touch on those points.
Yeah, to start it off, we want to really just continue to raise the awareness of what the results of the study are. The CEDC is going to be undertaking a number of different marketing initiatives. We'll see some billboards around town soon, just highlighting some of the key information. And then obviously we'll be using our social platforms as well to continue the dialogue, encouraging our partners to also continue to share that information. Like I said, presenting to the different bodies. And then we'll see where it goes, right? I think where we have opportunity to influence, we will. And we do hope that this will be a continuous effort so that the steering committee will not be dismissed of their duties. We hope that we'll continue the partnership and we'll continue to do this in the years to come.
And the partners, maybe you could talk a bit about the partners. You were saying there was Indigenous Partners, of course, NEDF was one of them. And the other partners, maybe you can just mention, was the Anishinaabe Business Professional Association and
Fort William
First Nation, right? So you have those partners. So is there an expectation that you're going to be getting more partners, changing them out, or using the same ones, or?
Well, I think I would go.
To all of the above?
It could be open to any of the anybody who's interested, and I would look to the partners to also identify if there's somebody that we're missing, somebody that should be a part of the conversation.
Awesome. If someone wanted to read the report itself, where would they go to get it?
They could find it on our website.
Which is?
Go to thunderbay.ca.
Okay. And they can go there and
they can go there.
It's a PDF, right?
It's a PDF form. We do have a QR code that we could share with the partners as well. We'll be sharing that on our social media. So follow the CEDC accounts and you'll find the report.
And you gave a presentation recently to a conference in town. Maybe you could speak to who you did that with. And
yeah, I had the privilege of presenting to the Nagani Issuing Conference this week. So an economic development conference. I think there was over 300 attendees in the room, so all were able to hear the highlights of the study. And those are community economic development professionals from across northwestern Ontario.
Yeah. And is there more invites at some point?
Well, we'll see. Maybe I'll get some more invites after today.
Okay. All right. Well, is there anything else you wanted to say on the report before we wrap up?
No, let's continue talking about it and talking about the great results so that we can continue talking about Indigenous contributions to the city of Thunder Bay.
All right. Thank you very much for coming to visit us today and sharing your thoughts on this report. And if people want to know more about this report, you can go to gothunderbay.ca.
That's right.
And they can download the PDF there. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
All right. That concludes another episode of the Prosperity Podcast with your host, Brian Davey, focusing on economic empowerment in Northern Ontario. Subscribe, rate, and comment to support Indigenous entrepreneurship. Remember, when we grow together, we all prosper. Stay inspired, stay innovative, and let's keep prospering together.
This video serves as general information. While we strive to offer accurate and current information, we do not provide any express or implied warranties regarding the completeness, accuracy, reliability, or suitability of the information presented in this video for your specific circumstances. Any reliance you place on this information is entirely at your own risk. We strongly recommend consulting a qualified professional before making decisions based on the content provided in this video to ensure it aligns with your unique situation.